The so-called Bagman is a figure common to almost every culture. It is said he eats children, preferring to prey on those that are nice. And when the child is at their most terrified, he steals them away in his bag.
No matter where you try and run or hide, he always knows where to find you.
At the beginning of the movie, a father and daughter are at the playground. The father says, "Your mom mentioned you wanted to tell me something." The daughter replies, "Remember the day you let me ride my bike to practice?" He interrupts, "You rode through the storm drain by the old mine? Did something happen there?" The daughter says, "Nothing happened, Dad. I just scared myself." He responds, "Is that why you started carrying Bunny Bear again?" The scene then cuts to nighttime. The father heads to the shed for some work. Suddenly, the lights start flickering and shutting off one by one. The girl, frightened, calls out for her dad and hears a noise from inside the shed. She goes in and hears someone coughing. She finds her father paralyzed. Suddenly, someone appears from behind, grabs her face, and crushes her body to fit her in a bag, zipping it shut. The scene then shifts to a family. Patrick tells his wife, Karina, that he didn't sleep well because he heard strange sounds in the backyard. Later, he shows his project prototype to his brother, Liam, explaining that he's looking for an investor to fund it, but his other loans are pending. That night, when Patrick goes outside to throw out the garbage, the lights start flickering, and he hears a noise. He goes to check, and again hears a sound from the woods. Curious, he decides to investigate with a flashlight. As he ventures into the woods, he hears rustling behind some bushes and cautiously checks, only to find an ambush. Startled, Patrick panics and runs back. Then, in a flashback, we see Patrick and Liam as teenagers, crashing into the storm drain. Patrick nervously warns, "Dad said we're not supposed to be here," but Liam ignores him. As they continue, they discover an entrance. Patrick, frightened, urges Liam to go back home. Just then, Patrick notices a wild plum tree and approaches it. He says Grandpa said it has the softest wood for carving. He begins breaking a branch when Liam warns him, "You're too close to the entrance." Patrick taunts, "You're the one who's scared." Suddenly, the tree falls. As Patrick moves closer to cut a branch, he hears an eerie sound, but he ignores it. Just then, someone approaches him, holding a pair of scissors. Without warning, the man cuts a patch of Patrick's hair. Patrick collapses to the ground, and the carved owl he was holding falls with him. Patrick looks inside the entrance in fear and hears a strange sound. The scene shifts to Karina, who is trying to work while Jakey keeps playing the flute. Frustrated, she shouts at him, but immediately apologizes and asks him to stop. Suddenly, Jakey hears a child laughing in the woods. He sees a wooden doll waving at him and follows it into the forest. Karina soon realizes Jakey is no longer on the ground. Panicked, she starts searching for him and runs into the woods. Meanwhile, Jakey continues playing the flute as he follows the doll deeper into the trees. He sees the doll hiding behind a tree and moves closer. Karina, hearing the sound of the flute, finally spots Jakey near the tree. As they prepare to leave, she hears a strange noise from the tree, but sees nothing unusual. However, as they walk away, we see a hand going behind the tree. Later that night, we find Patrick in his workspace, carving a piece of wood. He receives an email notifying him that his request for an extension on the loan payment has been denied. In anger, he slams his hand on the table, causing his carving tool to break. Frustrated, he clears his desk and throws the broken tool into the trash bin. Just then, he notices Jakey talking to someone on the monitor. Patrick goes to Jakey's room and asks who he's speaking to. Jakey replies, "Dolly." Patrick looks around. tucks Jakey into bed, and opens the window, thinking a moth may be in the room and needs to be let out. Suddenly, something hits the window. Startled, he quickly shuts it and draws the curtain closed. As Patrick steps outside, the lights begin to flicker, and he hears a sound coming from downstairs. He goes to investigate and hears a knock on the door. Thinking the sound is coming from the window, he tries to close it. Suddenly, he hears a clacking noise from outside. He looks out the window from his room. Karina asks, "What are you doing?" He replies, "I think someone's out there." He tells her to listen closely to the sound, a strange zipping noise, like someone opening or closing a rucksack or duffel bag. Karina decides to check, but just as she does, they hear a loud noise followed by Jakey's cries. Patrick rushes to Jakey's room. Patrick goes downstairs to investigate and tells Karina to stay inside. Downstairs, he notices the front door is open. He steps outside and challenges whoever is there to show themselves. Just then, he hears the zipper clacking sound, this time coming from the woods. Startled, Patrick begins to recall old memories. Karina emerges from the house, and Patrick hears a growling sound coming from the woods. The scene cuts to the next morning, where an investigative team is at the house. Patrick explains to the investigating officer that the doors were locked. The officer asks, "Do you keep a spare key outside?" Karina responds, "Yes," and shows him the spot. The officer suggests, "It must have been a thief." Karina questions, "Then why didn't they steal anything?" The officer instructs them to thoroughly check if anything is missing from the house. Later, we hear Jakey playing the flute. As Patrick cleans his trash can, he finds the same carved owl he lost in the storm drain inside it. Patrick asks Karina, "Where did you find this?" Karina replies that she has never seen it before. She then takes out the flute and asks Patrick to hide it, as its sound irritates her. Patrick agrees and places the flute there. We then see Jakey bathing, and he asks Patrick for his flute. Patrick heads to the storeroom to retrieve it. As he goes, he shouts, "Are you okay?" Jakey responds, "Okay." Suddenly, the lights flicker. Jakey asks, "Is that Dolly?" Patrick searches the storeroom, but finds the flute missing. Suddenly, a doll knocks on the window as the door slams shut. Alarmed, Patrick calls out once more, "You okay?" This time, Jakey doesn't respond. Panicking, Patrick runs to the bathroom. As he does, we see someone opening the window. But when Patrick and Karina arrive at the bathroom, they find Jakey safe. Later that night, Patrick searches for the flute in the garbage, but doesn't find it. While lying in bed, he receives a notification that the alarm system has been interrupted. He gets up to check and reactivates it. As he does, he notices movement outside in garage. He heads out to the garage and grabs a flashlight to investigate. He spots a child sitting in the corner. As he approaches, he realizes it's a wooden doll wearing his childhood cap. Suddenly, the doll laughs and Patrick throws it away in shock. When he tries to go back inside, he finds the door locked. He searches for the spare key, but it's missing. Desperate, he attempts to break into the house but fails. Just then, he notices someone inside playing the flute. Panicked, Patrick breaks door glass to get in, but when he enters, he finds no one there. The next day, the officer returns to investigate and asks, "Is anything missing from the house?" Patrick replies, "Jakey's flute is missing, and I heard someone playing it last night." Later, Patrick visits Liam and shows him the old carved owl, reminding him, "I lost this in the storm drain that day, but I found it in my trash bin." He then shows Liam his old cap. Concerned, Liam suggests, "Maybe you should meet with Barbara again, your childhood psychiatrist." The scene then shifts to a playground where Jakey is playing. Suddenly, he approaches Karina and hands her something, saying, "It's from Dolly." Karina checks it and finds sketches. Startled, she rushes to Jakey, and to her horror, she sees some creature with Jakey in playbox. She tries to get in, but the creature unzips a bag, and just as he stuffs Jakey inside, Patrick jolts awake, realizing it was all a terrifying dream. The next morning, we see Barbara speaking with Karina about Patrick's childhood phobia. In a flashback, young Patrick is seen walking deep into the woods with his dad. They arrive at the storm drain, and his dad explains this place used to belong to a mining company. Patrick asks, "Who owns it now?" His dad whispers, "Now it belongs to Bagman." Patrick asks, "Who is Bagman?" His dad replies, "He searches for children to stuff into that awful sack of his butt. Not just any children." Patrick interrupts, "Yeah, he wants wants the naughty children who don't listen to their parents. His dad cuts him off. It's the good kids he wants, the shiny ones, the dreamers. Patrick protests. You're just trying to scare me. His dad screams. Yes, I am trying to scare you, and scared you better be. Later, we see Anna arranging a date for Patrick and Karina at a hotel, assuring them she will take care of Jakey for the night. That evening, Karina asks Patrick what really happened with him and Liam at the mine. He explains that he felt someone cut a lock of his hair. Karina asks, but why? Patrick replies, so that he always knows where to find me. Then in a flashback, we see Patrick's father tells him that no matter how big or fast Bagman is, he has a weakness. He reveals that Bagman cannot touch you as long as you have your carving tool. He explains, every kid has something that means more to them than anything else in the world, something they love so deeply it becomes a part of who they are. A child's love can be a magical thing. He advises Patrick to keep the tool close to his heart, warning, as long as you have it, he can't touch you. Never lose it, and never, ever throw it away. Karina then asks, now you are concerned that Flute is missing, and that's one thing that can protect Jakey. The scene then shifts to Anna's apartment, where she notices on the monitor that Jakey is smiling in his sleep. Suddenly, she hears a strange noise and throws the monitor aside. Alarmed, she checks on Jakey and calls security to see if anything is wrong on her floor. The security guard reassures her that nothing unusual appears on the cameras. Suddenly, the lights begin flickering and then go out. Anna tries to call security again, but the connection fails, and her phone is also unresponsive. Moments later, she hears a continuous knocking on the door. She retrieves pepper spray from her bag and cautiously approaches the door. Peering through the peephole, she sees the Bagman outside. To her horror, the lock begins to turn on its own. Panicking, Anna runs inside. She grabs a knife, picks up Jakey, and hides inside a wardrobe. After a tense silence, she hears footsteps approaching. She watches in terror as the Bagman moves around the room. Suddenly, he opens the wardrobe door and grabs Anna's face. He then approached Jakey with the scissors, and as he pulls down Jakey's blanket, scene cuts. Patrick and Karina arrive at the scene, and an officer hands Jakey over to Patrick. The officer informs him of a similar case from years ago, where a girl named Emily went missing, and her father exhibited symptoms like Anna's. He assures Patrick that his family will receive full security. Later, Patrick, Anna, and Karina arrive at Liam's house. While everyone is asleep, Patrick hears a strange noise from the monitor, and suddenly, the Bagman appears on the screen. Patrick rushes to Jakey's room, only to find that the Bagman has paralyzed Liam and his wife. He then spots the Bagman with Jakey trapped in a bag, fleeing the scene. Panicked, Patrick chases after the Bagman. He spots him running through the streets and follows him into the woods, eventually reaching a storm drain. There, he watches as the Bagman carries Jakey inside and yells for him to stop. Determined, Patrick rushes to the entrance, where he hears Jakey screaming for help. Cautiously, Patrick enters, searching desperately. He follows Jakey's cries through a narrow tunnel and squeezes through to the other side. As he stands, he notices a room dimly lit by candles. Scanning the area, he spots a nest containing binoculars, followed by several other nests filled with different toys. Suddenly, he sees a curtain. Pulling it back, Patrick finds a bag hanging ominously. Trembling, he unzips it only to discover a wooden doll inside. Examining it closely, he realizes Jakey's voice was coming from the doll. In that chilling moment, Patrick understands he's been trapped. The scene shifts to Liam's house, where Karina discovers that Jakey is still inside. Karina then realizes that Bagman didn't come for Jakey, but for Patrick. Meanwhile, Patrick, determined, challenges the Bagman to show himself. Just then, he hears Bagman growling. The Bagman appears, grabbing Patrick from behind and hurling him across the room. Paralyzed, Patrick watches in horror as the Bagman emerges from a narrow slit in the wall. The Bagman approaches, holding a nest. Patrick asks, "Why come for me now?" In response, Bagman takes out Patrick's broken carving tool. Just then, Patrick remembers his dad's words, to keep this tool close to his heart and never ever lose or throw it away. The Bagman sets the nest aside and retrieves Jakey's flute, playing it hauntingly. The scene flashes to the past, where Patrick's father says, "The only thing that gives me comfort at night is a belief that there is something good out there, much more powerful than all the bad stuff, something that loves and watches over us." Back in the present, the Bagman begins unzipping the bag. Seizing the moment, Patrick stabs the Bagman in the neck with the broken carving tool. Though the Bagman struggles to retaliate, the wound forces him back into the wall slit, writhing in pain. Patrick, weakened, tries to escape. He hears the wail of sirens in the distance, feeling a brief moment of relief. Suddenly, the Bagman lunges from above. Desperate, Patrick throws the flute outside. The Bagman closes in, and Patrick yells, "It's me you want!" The Bagman grabs his face. In a desperate fight, Patrick pulls back the Bagman's hood, revealing his monstrous face. Bagman then lifts Patrick and crushes his body to forcefully stuff him into the bag. As Patrick's head is pushed in, the Bagman zips the bag shut. The scene shifts to the security team arriving with Karina. They discover the flute on the ground, and Karina tearfully identifies it as Jakey's. Overcome with emotion, she cries out for Patrick, helpless and broken. Later, we see Jakey playing while Karina prepares to move away from the house. Anna tells Karina that there is still hope as they haven't found Patrick's body yet. But Karina responds, "They won't find it, and it's not over yet." She adds, "I feel the Bagman will come back for Jakey." Anna then comforts her by hugging. As Karina travels with Jakey, she hands him the flute and asks, "How much do you love your flute?" Jakey responds with an enthusiastic gesture. Karina says, "Your dad wanted to share a secret with you that a child's love is a magical thing. Keep it close to your heart, and it will always protect you." With those parting words, they continue their journey, and the film ends. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the chills, hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss a scare. Until next time, stay spooky.